With all that, we'll give introduction to Elizabeth Neumeyer. She's going to talk about KCC. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this working good? Okay. As he said, my name's Liz Neumeyer. I taught at Kellogg Community College from 1968 till 2007, and they won't let me go yet. So out of the 60 years of the book that I wrote, I claim 48 of them, even though 39 were the governor counts on the pension, you know. In May of 1968, my professor called me in at Central Michigan University. He said, Liz, this community college wants to interview you. I said, really? Yeah, down in Battle Creek. Here's the date. Go. Okay. It turned out, and I don't know if some of you, I know you worked there, that you might remember Paul Heath. Paul was the dean at the time, and he had gone to Central Michigan. And he said, there are entirely too many men in the social science department. He calls up Central Michigan and says, you got any women? There usually weren't. I was, I think, the only woman that was a history major. And he said, Liz, go down there. So I got in my '56 Chevrolet and prayed that it would hold together, and got down here and walked up. It was a beautiful Michigan day. I think it was the 6th of May, I'm not positive. It was so beautiful. I walked up that campus, and our campus was, you know, it's still a nice campus, but it was more beautiful then because we had all these blooming, the trees that were blooming. And as I walked up that steps, I thought, oh, please, dear God, make them hire me. It worked. It worked. So what I'm going to do today is talk about KCC. A number of you asked me about the book. This is the hard copy, always a Bruin, and it's the 60 years of Kellogg Community College. I really concentrated on the second 30 years, not the first, because Neva Bartel wrote a book about KCC also. But I thought, I can't assume people have read that book. So I condensed her book. So there's the Reader's Digest version in here of Neva's book, which is also online if you want to read the entire book. And then I went from there, and starting with Dr. Ohm. But before I go any farther, I'd like these two people to stand up and turn around. You are looking at members of the first and second graduating class of Battle Creek Community College.
They're gonna mount us in the museum.
Yeah, yeah. Afterwards, we'll mount them. Yeah. So this is, for those of you that don't know, this is John and Ann Sherva. John taught at Penfield many, many years, and he does WK out at the Manor.
At the Manor.
Are you still doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and here's what really annoys me. He can still fit into his Battle Creek Community College jacket, which he donated to us, to the KCC, but he still fits in the jacket. I mean, that's really annoying.
I always tell people, and I always tell the story, when I got out of Battle Creek Central in 1956, graduated, I was going to get a job at Weston Cookies. Okay? And we lived in Verona.
Yeah.
And we lived above the store, okay? And I didn't know anything about Battle Creek Community College, I mean, that it was going to be started. And one day I was upstairs watching TV. My dad came upstairs and he said, I went down and I signed you up for college. Go next week. And I'm glad I didn't argue with him. But I had no intention of going, but it worked out that way. And my wife, whose brother was a Methodist minister here in Battle Creek, Upton Avenue Methodist, and he told her, why don't you come down and stay here with me, with us, and go to college. So we met at college. From Cadillac. And we met there at KCC, and I can't remember the first time we went.
Your girlfriend introduced me to you.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that part of the story.
So that was, for us, this is what, our wedding anniversary would be the 59th?
Yep.
Yeah, the 59th wedding anniversary in December, so.
The January, yeah.
But, yeah, it was quite it's always interesting. I always like to ask people, how did you two meet? Because everything had to fall in place just right for all to happen. Because I wouldn't have gone to college, probably, who knows. And Weston's is gone, so that's it. Okay, bye.
Yes, thanks, fellas, guys, and ladies. June, would you stand up too? June was Sid DeBoer's first lab assistant, right?
I don't know if I was his first, but I
Well,
was his lab assistant.
just claim it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We had Sid.
He was a great guy.
Oh, was he ever?
John had him in high school and then had him in
I always
college.
kidded him that I thought once I got out of high school I'd be done with it.
Well, if you had to get somebody again, he was a good one to get.
Yes, he was great.
Yeah, I went there for 2 years and I served at the dedication, was it May of '62?
Oh, well, it would have been the Lane Thomas building, we finally figured out. She brings me this little mug and says, I handed these out, I don't know why, can you figure it out?
Wow,
But we did.
You served somebody.
Yeah, we did, you did, you did. It was Lane Thomas trustees and the board. I'll tell that story too later.
Then
Yeah.
later on, I came back there to teach, which I hadn't planned to do ever, early childhood classes, and then help develop the new early program
Yeah.
that's there now.
The other thing I was going to, come on in.
One of our first year.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to mention about John and Ann is that I had a photo taken of them with their son and their granddaughter because I was looking for 3 generations. 60 years in genealogy is 3 generations. So I was trying to collect 3 generations of Kellogg Community College grads. So you should see them in the book. Unless they lost the picture, I don't know. Yeah. The book.
Okay, no, he's not coming in. Where's he?
Oh, I was going to ask everybody to raise their hand. There are many people here who worked at Kellogg Community College and went to Kellogg Community College. Let's say, hey, all right. Yeah. Yeah, we should have billed this as some sort of reunion.
I just saw Mr. Cantrell, he was in our class.
Well, yeah, why
He
isn't
didn't come in.
Oh, yeah, he's the first.
Yeah, he was in the first class.
He was the first one to walk across the stage of the first graduating class. Somebody go out and get him. He needs to get in here.
Kurt's gonna do it.
Yeah, okay. All right. The book. I can't answer you when it comes to when the book's coming out. This is it. 4 years of work. And I handed it in to Eric Green. Eric's cleaning it up because I just kept writing. So if chapter 6 I hyphenated vice president and maybe I didn't do it in chapter 10, I didn't care. That's why you have editors.
That's right.
So he is the editor, all right, of the thing. And of course they're doing it all as they work. So they're because I didn't want it farmed out, I want it to, so I can't answer you. Mr. Cantrell, you have to stay standing up.
How did you even know who it was?
Huh?
How did you even know who it was?
Because I was at the historic marker.
Oh, and you got
And so, and then I have this gentleman I'm introducing first. This young man was the first to walk across the stage of the first graduating class of Battle Creek Community College.
It was just a matter of a name. It wasn't academic.
Oh, so I really can't give you a straight answer about when the book's going to come out. Because we still, Eric, as I understand it, Eric has edited it. And now what we have to do is, I made millions and millions of suggestions about photos. So we have to do that, and then Kathy Jarvie, who is our media person, is going to lay the book out. After that, it goes somewhere to be published. I don't think we'll publish it ourselves, although we have a certainly good printing department. I'm not sure they want that task. So, what I did in the book was I decided to condense Neva's book, as I told you, into one chapter. And then I started in 1986 because my task was to go from 1986, 87, that academic year, to 2016, 2017. That gave us a total of 60 years of Kellogg Community College. I went to Delta College, which is up by Bay City. In fact, that's a 3-county community college. In fact, I didn't know this till I researched this book, that they had to get a special permission from the Michigan legislature because nobody had ever put 3 counties together to create one community college before. There was like no law or provision, you know. So this was Bay County, Midland County, and Saginaw County. And I was a sophomore. And they built the thing, they built it right in my backyard. And all of a sudden, college was possible for me. I can't tell you how much that meant to me and how much, and I would preach this to my students all the time, you better thank the taxpayers. The taxpayers are paying, well, now it's about 62%. When I used to go off on my rant at the students, it was about 72%. I said, don't tell me you're paying this all yourself. The taxpayers are paying this for you. Maybe I was more aware of that because for what, I forgot why, but I was the waitress for the board of trustees at Delta. They always asked for me. And the first time that happened, I was terrified because I'm just a country hick from a little farm, and I thought, oh my, well, you know, these are the bigwigs of, and how do I act around bigwigs? So I walk in there and one of them yells, Libby! That's my childhood nickname. He was my pediatrician. he's on the board of trustees. So anyway, I was far more aware of the significance of taxpayers and the board. And in my book, I used Gene Haymaker. Many of you know Gene. He was on our board for many, many years. He was a businessman over in Marshall. He's still hanging in there. Gene has a lot of issues, but he keeps hanging in there. And he talked about the students being the top of the pyramid, you know, the stars. And I thought, oh, I like that metaphor. So that's what I use in the book, because the base of the pyramid, if the base of the pyramid isn't any good, you can forget it. So those are the taxpayers. The taxpayers elect the board. The board doesn't want to be there every day. They hire an administration, and they hire a faculty, they hire the support staff, they hire the maintenance. I always remember one of my education, because I went through secondary education degree first. One of my professors said, don't pay any attention to the administrators. He said, the secretaries and the maintenance people are the ones that run the school. I've always found that to be true. So I paid attention to that particular advice. The other thing I did, people keep crediting me with this saying, but I'm sure I stole it from somewhere, is community is our middle name. And so the other thing I paid attention to was our connection to the community, and then after all, we are there for the students and for the community. And so my book is very biased. It's biased. I just tell people it is. The community college is the best invention that there ever was, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm glad to see in recent years, I still get very annoyed when people say, oh, well, if you can't go anywhere else, go to community college. That really sets me on fire. You know, it does. The community college is an invention of William Rainey Harper, who was the president of the University of Chicago. And although it didn't turn out the way he wanted, here was his idea. He thought, why should universities spend all this money on the freshman and sophomore level? Let somebody else do it. Let the high schools create a junior college, okay? So then that's, Bay City did have a junior college, but it seemed very distant to me. But what junior college meant, it was the first and second year. It wasn't a community college. And when I came to Kellogg Community College, Western was seriously discussing that idea, that they wouldn't bother with having freshman and sophomore classes anymore. They could just all go to community colleges, which would have been, probably by that time we had enough, but that would have been a major shift. Then all of a sudden, Western Michigan thought, hey, enrollment was declining. Hey, that's tuition. Hey, we don't want to do this. So it actually never turned out the way that William Rainey Harper expected, because he thought universities should just take all their money and concentrate on research, start with the junior year. So fortunately that never happened, because I don't agree with that concept. In 1921, there were so many junior colleges, they formed an association. Very shortly thereafter, it became the Association of Junior and Community Colleges. Now it's called the Association of Community Colleges. I don't know anybody that says junior college anymore. They just dumped that concept altogether. One of the big boosts was from President Truman. After World War II, with the GI Bill, they decided we need more college grads. So they set up the GI Bill, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act is the fancy name for it. Most people don't use that name. It's called the GI Bill. In the Truman Commission, they kept saying over and over, we need more community colleges, so that popularized the name. Incidentally, guess who was there funding the project from the get-go? The W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And when things started really exploding and they realized that there were so many community college popping up and you'd need all these teachers and leaders, they established in 10 colleges throughout the United States, which included the University of Michigan and Michigan State, community college leadership programs. That was funded, again, by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. As most of you know, Kurt told part of the story. How many read The Shopper? Yeah, so, Kurt just gave my talk, so I'll sit down.
You gave me the information.
And it was good.
Well, I don't want to repeat, too much. But we started in 1956, and the building was originally a firehouse, and it was at the corner of Manchester and Washington. Okay? But when the sand burned down, they decided this is too small, we need a bigger firehouse. And so they took the firehouse that was there and moved it. They moved it over to that triangular lot and gave it to the Grand Army of the Republic. And for many years, it was a Grand Army of the Republic Hall. And then gradually, of course, we kept losing the veterans of the Civil War. Orville Convis, if some of you know Orville, he told me this cool story that he said he was about 10 years old at the time of the 1931 centennial, and he's standing in the crowd, and he said these old guys are going by, and some of them are in cars, some of them are walking, and people are just going crazy, they're clapping, and he said, I didn't know what was going on, and afterwards I asked my parents, I said, why were they clapping for all these guys? They were Civil War veterans. So we still had about 12 in 1931. The widows kept it going for a while. And then Harry Davidson, who came as a superintendent, and Harry formed the leadership that formed Battle Creek Community College, because the board was a little hesitant, and they admitted it. They were trying to cope with the baby boom. I mean, not just a baby boom, but war babies. Some of you in here, I am a war baby, okay? We beat out you boomers by a couple of years here. And so anyway, so we're in school. I remember my mother saying to me, this is the biggest first grade we've had, and there were 7 of us. So the war babies hit, and then the baby boomers hit, and Battle Creek was going crazy, trying to keep up with schools. And so they were afraid of adding another expense, but Harry said, we're going to do it. We're going to build a community college. And so they looked at the Grand Army of the Republic Hall, which was, available, remodeled it, and that was the beginning. Some of the kids called it BC3, Battle Creek Community College. And one of the first serious elections was to decide between the Bruins, the Rams, the Pioneers, and the Terriers. Yeah, Bruins won. And the reason the Bruins won is because the kids said, at least according to the triad, I read all the newspapers from the beginning up to 2017, which was rather entertaining. Found lots of stories I can't include in the book. But, excuse me, they decided that because Battle Creek Central High School was the Bearcats, that they were going to be the Bruins, because that was a bigger bear. In fact, yeah, you know, so yeah, that's why they chose it. I'm glad. I mean, it sounds, I think it's some Terriers, and the Pioneers, that's ours. Delta College was the Pioneers. In fact, I wondered if there was such a thing as a bearcat, and actually that is an actual animal. Yes, it's from Southeast Asia. It's not really a bear. It's kind of like a lemur, looks like sort of a lemur raccoon, but it is pretty ferocious. So that's how we became the Bruins. All right. I want to give a little perspective here. Credit hour, $7. So when your dad signed you up, he was paying $7 a credit hour. Now it's 107.
Yeah, really?
Now let me give you a perspective though. $7 to 107, that sounds pretty abrupt. Gas was 23 cents a gallon. Okay, you could buy a car for $1,745 new. A first class stamp was 3 cents, and a 6-pack of beer was $1.20. Okay, so you know that, I think that made, you know, when you put what we have now in perspective, you know, it makes sense. Enrollment multiplied rapidly. They started immediately looking for someplace else. Now here's a sign that puzzled me. As some of you know, you read my Scene magazine articles, I'm always trying to figure out, you know, who's Freilinghuisen? I mean, who's Wawatasi? What is that? I'm trying to figure out names. And I used to do that with my kids. They didn't know what their names meant, which surprised me. I always knew what my name meant. It backfired on me one time. I went to a church school, a Lutheran school, and I must have been doing something. Usually I was angelic.
It's a story.
Stop laughing, Kurt. But my teacher said to me, Elizabeth, what does your name mean? He probably knew I knew. I said, in Hebrew it means consecrated to God. And he said, well then act like it. So it backfired on me. But so my students were fascinated by this, I discovered, knowing what their first name meant, knowing what their last name meant. And I was just always that way. Michael Mardich and I share that habit. We always wanted to know why something was called something. You know, why is this? So the thing that puzzled me, if you drive down North Avenue, it says Kellogg Community College in Kolb Park. Well, they started calling it Kellogg Community College prematurely because when the W.K. Kellogg Foundation gave the money, it was still Battle Creek Community College. They were still down at the Grand Army, the Republic Hall, but everybody just started calling it Kellogg Community College. And very quickly, you know, things like Rice Krispie College and, you know, Cornflake University and so on. So I thought, well, who are these people? You know, who on earth is Kolb? Well, he was actually was the president of Union Steam Pump. I have to find my book here. I don't have all these things memorized all the time. And Union Steam Pump, he was quite wealthy. His wife was quite wealthy. And they had the land over by Limit and Hubbard where Northwestern Middle School is now. They gave that land to the city as a park. The wife, or the widow, wanted to honor her husband as a park. Well, guess what? The school board was eyeing it. They talked to the city. They said, you know, that would be a nice place to build a new, because A&J Kellogg was like stuffed to the gills. They couldn't absorb any more kids. Again, the war babies and the baby boom is hitting. So they went to the Kolb family and they said, hey, would you make a trade? We'll give you this other piece of land we have over by Spring Lake on North Avenue. The Kolb family said, okay. That sounded like a good deal to them. And so their original property became Northwestern Junior High then, and now it's called Northwestern Middle School. So then the grand plan was to have this park. Toboggan runs, all this sort of, I don't know if you know this, but this was a gravel quarry. It was quite hilly. I'll tell you a gravel quarry story in a minute. It was quite hilly, and so they had this grand idea, let's do a park. Well, about the same time Harry Davidson's looking around for a new place for the community college. So they go to the Kolb family again. Would you like us to build a community college here instead? And then that's what happened. And in fact, at first they were going to kind of combine it. They were going to have like a winter park, a sports park, the community college. But then guess what happened? Binder family gave their land to the city. So, you know, all this just kind of fell into place. A funny story about the gravel quarry. Kurt Thornton's mother, Frances, told us that's where people went to park. That's where the teenagers went to park and to party. Yeah. So that was part of its history. The other history, this is cool. You know where the library is. Sally knows where the library is, our librarian here. That hill was about 60 feet higher way back when. But most of the land, we sort of flattened it out, you know, used to spray, one of those spray machines, and flattened everything. A young man named Pete Goff, Edgar, his nickname's Pete Goff. In 1912, in January, at about 4, I think it was 2 or 3 in the morning, built a glider, went up on that hill, took off, flying toward where Lila Hospital wasn't there yet. There was another hill on the bar, and he crashed into it. He wasn't hurt. The glider wasn't going that fast. Pete went on to Battle Creek Central High School, started an aeronautics club. They built a plane. This is a wonderful story. I can't get off on that because the story cracks me up. These boys and in fact, Pete Goff and then 2 other boys, Clayton Bruckner and Elwood Junkin, were the ones who formed WACO, that is the Weaver Aircraft Company, which nobody here in Battle Creek would listen to them, so they had to go to Ohio. Finally, we got WACO back at least. You know, it's in Battle Creek now, but we could have had an aircraft company here a long time ago if they'd listened to these young men. But you know, they're 15 and 16 years old. Who's going to listen to them? Pete, incidentally, is in the Michigan and the National Aeronautic Hall of Fame. So he went on to World War I, World War II, the Korean War. He went from flying that glider to flying jets. Okay. Another outstanding grad of Battle Creek Community. Yes, just in case you didn't know that. Now the other building, a building that I think is interesting, people don't know that one. I think most of you would be familiar with, you know, the Miller Foundation, you know, Harry is. One thing about the Davidson building, Will Colopy just passed away last week. Will was an art teacher and the head of the department. In his obituary, I thought it was interesting. They said Will taught in the basement. Well, that was under the stage. Okay, they taught in the basement. They taught in a building that was up on the corner of Roosevelt and North Avenue called the Hilton Harbor Inn, who was owned by a guy named Dave Moore. And Dave had built it a couple years before, not knowing the community college was coming in. So we bought his bar. He went on to build the Irish pub. So they built his bar, and we took it and remodeled it because it wasn't that old. But it never was totally a satisfactory building, but Will also taught there. And then when I came in 1968, they were still teaching classes in the cafeteria, just off what would be, I don't know what it's called now. I wasn't used to calling it quiet dining room. But anyway, when we went in there, it was a classroom. And Colopy had to chase his students out. They couldn't schedule anything between 12 and 1, so we could go in there and eat lunch. So finally, in 1972, Will Colopy finally got the Davidson building, so that we had a fine arts building. But I think the building most people wouldn't know the names of the people would be Lane Thomas. Lane Thomas. Loring Lane was an artist. He worked for Gage Printing. Gage Printing was a big, enterprise here. His wife, Maud Thomas Lane, was the daughter of a fellow who was the founder of Advanced Thresher. So she had inherited quite a few bucks. And when her husband died, she said, you know, I want some kind of appropriate memorial. And the board, the trustees of Lane Thomas just opened a bid to the city. They had like 400 requests for the money. And a fellow at our school, some of you know him, you remember him, his name was Jim Cook. Jim was in the, yeah, the tall, skinny guy. Jim was in the technical department. I don't know if he was the head by then. Eventually Jim was the vice president of the college. But anyway, he decided, well, I'll write one. We got it. You know, at that time, $445,000 to build the first technical building. So when we had that, then, and I'll read you some of the, we could have associate degree nursing, practical nursing, drafting and design, electronics, industrial management, mechanical technologies. You know, now most of that stuff is over at the RMTC. Not the nursing part. Most of the health things are in a new building called the Roll Building. But you know, that was a great move. Again, it was from the get-go. This used to crack me up. We would call these degrees that were only like 1 and 2 years. They'd keep calling them terminal degrees. What that mean? I'm going to get a terminal degree. I mean, we used it formally. It's not like the kids. The kids used it. A terminal degree? Oh, June, I forgot to mention that. I think that was the dedication of Lane Thomas where those little mugs were. That's what we figured out. Yeah. I could never find a direct link. But that's the only thing that makes any sense in that year that was big enough to merit them handing out these little, cool little KCC mugs. We only have one, so if you have any in your attic, let us know. Incidentally, we keep trying to build an archive. We've always had an archive, that is, it's always been our job to preserve the documents for the students, that is, so the catalogs, their registration, you know, the courses, their transcripts. But thanks to a librarian named Marge Maulding, she kept an archive sort of informally, but it was never like, you know, I don't think people acknowledged it as much as they ought to have. In 2010, the state of Michigan decided to order every college to have an archive. Preserve your history. And so Mark O'Connell, who was then the vice president for finance, became in charge of history. So he and Dennis Bona, who was the president at the time, we now have an actual formal archive with a formal archivist. If any of you have anything to give to the archive, please let me know. We take all kinds of stuff, brochures, handouts, anything that you have. We want it, you know, for the archives. When I did the book, I interviewed a lot of people, even though I knew that it might not necessarily be anything I'd use in the book. But every person around that was retired, at least in the leadership that I could grab, I did, and I interviewed them. During Paul's administration, which is what I was supposed to be paying attention to, but you know, my mind wanders. This is why historians never get anything done. You're just researching and you think, oh, that's an interesting question. I wonder what that is, and so I'll wander off on that, which really isn't my main point. When I did my master's thesis, I knew I only had 1.5 years to do it, so I behaved better, but yeah, most of the time I don't. But when Paul came, we really had a boom in terms of building centers. Our tax base originally was the Battle Creek public school system. That was the tax base. Then maybe 3 years after I came, I was still an employee of the Battle Creek Public Schools. So when that changed, we passed a millage that corresponds to the Calhoun Intermediate School District. I was really torqued because I bought property in Convis Township, and I thought, you know, because I lived in Kalamazoo, I thought now I can vote for stuff for KCC. And I couldn't because I was in the Bellevue School District. I didn't know there was this little jog, you know. That. Now we've tried since to get both Branch County and Berry County in our district, but we've never been able to get them to pass a millage. But we do have centers there, but they're out of district. I mean, the tuition that they pay there is out of district. When I came here, we were teaching in all those places. I taught down at Coldwater in any number of places, in the old high school, but it was always sort of inadequate because you could only do it at night. Okay, but then we did an experiment in Coldwater called Franklin School, which was an elementary school. We got our hands on it, I'm not sure how. It was really funny though, teaching there, because all the bulletin boards and the bathrooms and yeah, the water fountains, everything was geared to kindergarten through, you know, 4th grade or something. But what we did prove is that we could get lots of students in the daytime. You know, so that was a turning point. So after that, Dr. Ohm really got on the bandwagon, as well as Gene Haymaker, who was on the board by then, Ann Rosenbaum, Mike Ray. Some of those board members were instrumental in pushing for actual centers. So we have the Grawl Center, we have the Faisenfeld Center, which is in Hastings, the Grawl Center is in Coldwater. We have the Eastern Academic Center, which is over between Albion and Marshall. It's near the Star Commonwealth. The RMTC is right within our district. They're called, why are you calling them centers? And Paul said it was because of the accreditation requirements. If we called it a campus, if we actually said it was Grawl campus, then we'd have to have everything there. We'd have to have a library, we'd have to have a gymnasium, we'd have to have a cafeteria. So, you know, it's wording, the powers that be. Grawl is named after a German industrialist who had a furniture factory. He was an educator, actually. I don't know why he went into furniture, but he decided to build a factory in Coldwater. Okay. He comes over and he says, I'll give you all the furniture. Free. If I can bring people over here to show off the furniture. Well, are we going to say no? Of course not. But so when we built Faisenfeld, and Faisenfeld was the superintendent of the Berry County Intermediate School District. So anyway, Grawl says, well, I'll give you more furniture. And they were really, really tight to the deadline. Okay? And so the furniture comes the night before. So Dr. Ohm, Mark O'Connell, Bob Rimkus, who was our treasurer, Kathy Tarr, I don't remember who else, they're all up there. The furniture comes in on a truck. They unload the furniture. All the instructions are in German. They managed. They put it together, and in fact, Grawl was so tickled by the whole idea that he sent them all a certificate as certified Grawl furniture installers. So, you know, that was a great story. Now let's see what else. Oh, the walkway. You know, the walkway. I mean, so it looked good, but how many of you remember that you're on the walkway if it rained? You know, you had to walk over on the other side from the wind. Your butt got wet anyway. I mean, the snow, yeah, it just didn't work. Mark O'Connell went up to Kellogg Community College and Badenoch, that are both in the UP. And in fact, the same day that I got offered a job at KCC, I was offered a job at Badenoch. So he thought, oh, this is really, really cool. And so Mark sketches out a whole plan, and Dr. Ohm, who is still the president at this particular point, they decide they're going to just tear that walkway down and put a covered walkway in. And that's wonderful. How many have been over there at KCC since that walkway's there? Yeah, it just connects everything together nicely. And if you're so inclined to exercise, it's marked off and you can walk, indoors in the winter and get your walk in. I wouldn't go in the morning. There's too many kids there. Probably about 3 o'clock, maybe, or something like that would be good. Let's see what else. I don't know. I do have a handout to give you. Being a teacher, I just never give it out ahead of time because then you'd read it and not pay attention to what I'm saying. So I do have, yeah, I wasn't born yesterday. So there's all that, like if you're going to say to me, well, when was the Davidson building built? It's all on here. It's all on here. When was Dr. Whitmore the president? How many came to the Miller open house? Anybody else came to the Miller building? Okay. People want to say to me, why didn't they just fix that building? That's all kind of money. Well, folks, the ceiling was rotten. Dr. Ohm said he lived in terror during most of his administration that some piece of the ceiling would fall on a student. As what happened is the chemicals from the pool, it wasn't vented properly, so it corroded everything. So it's not like we could just remodel the building. As some people said, you're wasting money. No, we weren't. There wasn't any other way to do it. Plus, that's really very wet. I don't know if you know this, a lot of KCC is built on a swamp. It's a quarry. So the foundation needed to be done much better than had originally been because like the floors of one of the gyms was warped and all of this sort of thing. So we really did have to rebuild it. Plus what people care about now is different. I mean, they want Pilates. They want cardio. They don't care about a pool. We do still have sports teams, obviously, but that always seems to be changing too. But it's a nice building. It's not brick. I wish it were, but hey, it would have cost us a lot more money than the siding that's on there now, which may not be the most attractive, but at least it's gray and blue, isn't it? I don't know who picked those colors. I never could discover that. I don't know if some board member arbitrarily said it's blue and gray.
It was the same time that they voted on the name.
Did you vote on the name? Okay.
They voted on the colors.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because it didn't say that in the Bruin, so I was or in the Triad.
Yeah.
I was sort of puzzled.
Yeah,
So
it was
you
the
got to
same
vote?
time. Yeah.
You remember any of the other choices?
What do I have brown and something?
Brown and gold, maybe?
I don't, I can't remember. I can just remember it was brown and something. I do remember.
Yeah, I never came across that story, so they apparently didn't seem free to print it in the Triad.
And we voted on it. Remember, there was
Yeah.
a jar in
Yeah.
the office, and you dropped in your opinion.
Uh-huh, okay. So blue and silver became the colors, and that when you look at the Miller gym, that's what we did with it. We put it in this mostly kind of different variations of silver. Actually now, I don't know where I read this, but if you're building a house or you're staging your house, you're going to redo your house, the in color is gray. So I guess we're in.
For this time. For a while.
No, yeah, for a while. Yeah, that's what I always, they tell you this, and I think, yeah, but what if you're going to sell your house in 20 years and there's some other in color? Yeah. No, in my book, houses are white and green. They're white with green trim. Yeah, that's the way it should be. We also established foundation, and Elizabeth Karcher, who was the daughter of Lon Karcher. I can't think of his mother's name. Anyway, they had already given us Kellogg stock. Karcher was a bank president. Elizabeth was an independent businesswoman somewhere off in Boston, but when she died, we got this letter that gave us $7 million. Wow. Unrestricted. Wow. So to start a foundation, you need a big chunk of change. And so we had several different groups like that, but Elizabeth Karcher's was enough to start the foundation. So we also have during Paul's time, the Kellogg Community College Foundation. And from which I stole their motto, always a brewin'. Okay, that's their motto. What else? Oh, a good example of our community connection is that then Dr. Herring was president by this time. Marge Weil, who directed the boys' choir, was looking for a home, and Dr. Herring said, "We'll sell you one for $1." Okay, so they built the building. We owned the building, but they had to pay us. In fact, I guess Marge said for a joke, they got a pillow and they put a silver dollar on it and gave it to Ed as the purchase price. So we maintained the building, but you know, we have all these music programs there for the children and the symphony and everything else at Battle Creek. So I think I'm really very fierce, I guess, about that kind of thing, that we are not some, you know, academic institution up on a hill separate from the city. A community college has to be part of the community it serves. It can't be distant from it. And as we've gone along, I think we've gotten better and better and better at achieving that. So, any questions, comments, stories?
Well, yeah, I had a Guido Binda scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
Did they do anything more for the college than that? Or did
Oh,
they
my
just-
heavens, yes.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah,
remember.
look, Mr. and Mrs. Binda, Guido and Elizabeth, God bless their souls. Elizabeth, well, I was the president of the union at the same time that Elizabeth was president of the board, and she used to joke that the Elizabeths ran the college. No, she ran the college. Elizabeth was a great lady. I can't say anything, but I mean, it's hard to overestimate the value of that woman to the college. She constantly pushed for improvements, and she is the one really who is the core of the foundation. She wanted a foundation much earlier, but we didn't get a big enough chunk of change from somebody to do it. So really, our foundation is Elizabeth's doing. The arts, a lot of that. Now, Eleanor and Bob DeVries have contributed quite a bit too after Elizabeth, but Elizabeth was the constant driving force, and her husband Guido. I was doing something else one day, and I came across an article in the paper. Oh, I was doing the home front of World War II in Battle Creek. Guido Binda was helped build the Burma Road in World War II. And so I cut the article out. I didn't know if Elizabeth had it. I sent it to her, and she didn't. That was cool. Unfortunately, he was gone by then, or I'd have been right over at the house interviewing him for something that major during the war. Elizabeth also and her husband Guido formed the Gold Key Scholarship. The Gold Key Scholarship has expanded and expanded over the years. When I was on the original committee, I think we had 4 scholarships maybe to give, and now we have up to 12. It's a full ride to KCC. Yeah, Karen's grandson has one of them. It's a full ride. It's a very generous scholarship, and it's modeled after what Elizabeth and Guido did over at Western with the medallion.
They paid for my second year.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they were instrumental from the get-go, but Elizabeth wasn't on the board until we went area-wide.
Yeah.
Well, I think because they lived in Lakeview, she couldn't have run, you know, because you're talking about just being the Battle Creek School District. But the minute we became area-wide, Liz Binda was right there. She may be, I'm not exactly sure, she and Mike Ray may be the longest serving board members of the college. So
I
yeah.
appreciated it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you know, same thing with me, because I didn't really know how I was going to go to college. I mean, it became more possible for me because it was in my backyard, but scholarships made the difference. That and the pickle factory. I worked in the pickle factory. Yeah.
If the legacy scholarship gets started through Battle Creek Schools and Wisdom,
That, okay, that is the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. We administered it for a while. They did it as part of, I think it was their part of a 75th anniversary of the foundation. So they decided to establish the legacy. So we help administer it. The legacy, we'd like to expand it if we can, because what the legacy is what you call final dollars. In other words, the student has to get as much money as they can first, and then whatever's left, like if they still need $500 or $75, yeah. It's not a total package like it is over at Kalamazoo, the Kalamazoo Promise. It's slightly different. But that's the W.K. Kellogg Foundation's creation. Anything else? Any other questions or stories? Yes?
Did you do the article that was in the Enquirer when they did the dedication for Sid DeBoer's plaque? Because it's interesting, him being 4 teachers to start the college that gave up their jobs at the high school.
No, I didn't write that article.
Somebody did, and I'm thinking it was wonderful, so it had to be you.
Oh, well, thank you. No, but I,
Yeah, but they gave up their jobs because of Harry Davidson with the idea there was no teacher union at that time. So when they took the job at KCC, there was nothing to come back to because Harry had already filled the jobs.
well, and the thing is, this is still Battle Creek Community College. There's no guarantee at the first year. They only wrote the first year's schedule, which was on 4 mimeographed sheets of paper. And that was the catalog. There was no guarantee there'd be another year.
Right.
But it was so successful, it exploded. I mean, enrollment tripled immediately. So they realized, oh, we need
We were
to.
in the basement of the high school for classes.
Yep. Yeah, you were all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Willard Library had the bookstore. There you had a student union over in the Miller Stone building, which was then the YWCA. You had the youth building, the field house,
WK upstairs, the library.
and WK, the library. Yeah, you see, there were only 3 classrooms in the Grand Army. Yeah, so you guys were all over the place.
And one of the teachers that I had for English at BCCC, okay?
Mrs. Hampton.
Mrs.
Eva Hampton.
My brother had her at Michigan State.
Oh,
She taught there.
She
Really?
had been at Michigan State. I don't know how she got over there. Oh, but yeah, because he was the one that was the minister, and I thought, well, she's gonna expect me to talk like he does. And I didn't.
no, Eva, in fact, she was the one who helped the kids do the triad, and I think even the Lodestar. Kurt, did you bring? Yeah, some of you have seen that, the Lodestar. It wasn't meant to be a yearbook. It was meant to be a kind of a photographic survey of the college at the time, and it's fun to look through. There was never another one. Never another one. But I interviewed many people. Oh, and I discovered a secret, folks. I belong to St. Thomas Episcopal, so one day I'm talking about the book, and I hear one of the guys say, well, Liz, I was the first president of the class when we moved up to the campus at North Avenue, Ross Dingwall. And he said, but I went a year to the Grand Army, the Republic Hall, and then I went up there. I said, oh, and he was on the basketball team. I said, oh, Ross, you form an interesting niche. I want to talk to you. So as I'm interviewing him, he got this funny look on his face, and he confessed. He and his basketball team were the first ones to dump soap flakes into the reflecting pool. Now, I didn't put that story in the book with names. Neva did, but not with names. I'm not sure Neva knew who it was. Yeah, Ivory Flakes. And then, of course, which they made a colossal mess. I said to Ross what happened. He said, well, I think it was President Hatton called them in and said, now, boys, we need to be more mature. But he never told their parents or anybody. They managed to escape. But Ross's son is on the board of the foundation, KCC Foundation. So Teresa's telling him this story. He calls up, he said, Dad, is that really true? And Ross said, see, now you see what it's like to be a father.
I got a story. Just
Yeah.
how small the enrollment was when we were there, you know, compared to today. And was it Mr. Smith? Wasn't that his name?
I don't
The
know.
English teacher? And we had to take the final exam.
No.
I know she's
What
gonna
was his
correct me.
name? I can't
Anyway,
remember.
whatever his name
Wasn't
was,
Smith, anyway.
professor.
I know what you're gonna
And
tell me.
part of the assignment was you had to match famous couples in literature. Romeo, Juliet, so on and so forth. Well, when the test was given, he had my name and her name. Because we were so close, everybody knew
Yeah, he
everybody.
wouldn't let you keep, he let me keep that page of the test.
Yeah. And he didn't
But I
count
said,
it.
why did, I said, I said, what if people didn't know we were going together? And he said, I didn't count it wrong.
We were part of the
He said, I just needed one
English
more
test.
couple. He said,
Yeah, actually,
Mr. Mitchell.
Mr. Mitchell. that-
Mr. Mitchell, okay, because I think I've seen his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me that some of you remember Carol Edmonds, who was Carol Finley. She and her husband, Rich, met at Battle Creek Community College also. I think she was in the 3rd class at the college, and she was the editor of the Triad. I have this picture of her when she's, you know, like 19 years old. I think we're sneaking that into the book too. So, any other stories or comments, questions? You know, I am tired of people running down community colleges. I am tired of people running down Battle Creek. Folks, we are great, okay? Don't forget, Tony the Tiger, we are great, and we will continue. Yes, sir.
Hey Liz, great talk. As you know, I teach over at Western.
Uh-huh.
But before I taught at Western, I was working down in Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
in the oil industry.
Oh,
And I taught at community colleges in the evening. There were 2 of the Dallas community colleges. And I would teach a class that started at 8, went to 11.
mm-hmm,
And it was the second class that most of the kids were taking after work that
Mhm.
day.
yep.
And I almost never had anybody miss class. And they were all excellent students. I very seldom had a grade that showed up less than a C on anything. And I would put them up against anybody at Western or any of the other schools I've ever been at.
When I taught, okay, I went to Central, after I went to Delta, I went to Central Michigan. I was a graduate assistant. So you took freshman Western Civ, you got me. You did not get a professor.
Yeah.
So you're paying all this money and you're not getting the, well, actually we had sort of a mixed system. So once a week they did actually get a full professor, but most of the time it was me. You know, they're paying all this money for me. You could go to community college.
In Texas, they really kind of had caught on to the value of community college.
Uh-huh.
And they set it up so that all of the course numbers were exactly the same as the course numbers at the University of Texas.
Which is what we should do.
After 2 years, you could automatically transfer
Mhm.
there, and all those courses would count. There was no question about
Mhm.
whether they transferred or not.
Yeah.
So they valued it. And a lot of kids went to community college for the first 2 years just because it was half the price of going to university.
Oh, sure. And now, don't forget, all of you that are grandparents, make sure your grandchildren know they can dual enroll. We have had kids who have actually gotten their degree and their high school diploma at the same time. It is possible, and the public school is paying for it. Yeah. Yeah.
And Western has a deal with Kellogg that some of the credits come
Yep.
from both.
Oh, yeah. We have quite a few deals now with where if a student signs up, they have to sign up for a specific program, but like the aviation
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
which is why I think it's appropriate that Pete Goff took his sail off in his glider off of one of our hills, that we have the aviation school. We made a deal with Michigan State just recently for agricultural programs. Yeah, so if you sign up for them, you're enrolled in both colleges at the same time. Yeah. Who else? June, you had
I
a,
was gonna say, when I went to KCC and then went on to Michigan State, they said, well, expect your grades to go down. And of course, I thought they would, but they didn't.
yeah.
So I figured they did a good job.
No, we generally keep track, and there might be a little drop, but not much. No. That students segue over pretty well.
Well, when
Yep.
when you had instructors like Sid DeBoer, why wouldn't it? I mean, I had him in high school.
Oh, you had Sid in high school too. How many of you had Sid in high school? No. Okay. Yeah. These are Sid's diaries from his years as a map maker in World War II. I didn't know he had them. Now I have them.
That's great.
Yeah. Sid's in the Hall of Fame, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Battle Creek Central, 3 years ago.
Okay,
His
good.
wife was secretary in the high school.
Oh, she was?
Millie.
Okay. Anything else? Any other stories, tales, questions? Someday my book will come out. I don't know when, but we'll have a party. I keep telling them I want a party.
Right.
So, well, thank you for coming, folks.
Thank you.
AccessVision. Your voice, your community.